Hello out there on this lovely Eugene morning. We are supposed to get 41 degrees here today, which has been the highest temperature ever recorded in the history of this beautiful little university town in Oregon. So hello, Mr. Trump. I know you think global warming is not a thing, but how do you explain it then? Anyway, let's get to the subject. This is the video that will conclude this bicycle because I have agreed to pass it on to a friend. Well, this bike here, and especially in its current form of build, stands for is that you can build a very good bike from very humble ingredients. I have had a ride. I've done about an hour this morning. I cycled my favorite little single trails and the connecting roads and bridges and rivers here. My favorite ride, the accumulation of all the little best bits and bobs that I have found here. I'm here on a tiny little lake that's just behind our house, which is located near Autzen Stadium. It's too hot for bugs to be out here today, so they're sleeping, so it's pleasant. So let's talk about this bike. What we have here is a Jamis frame. It's a steel framed with a non-lugged welding construction, and it does not give any indication what kind of quality of tubing is used, but by the right quality it must be something rather of decent quality. So it's out of the Tangier Cross series. Tangier, it's probably a French word, probably a French desert in Sahara, something like that. I have no idea, but I'm just guessing. So it's a Jamis, and it says here, let me just walk around. It says here as 1999, so that's basically giving the age of the brand. Started in 1979, so at the time of this sticker was created, the brand was 20 years old, and I'm guessing this frame is from 1999, and it must have been a damn special frame back then. Stick with the frame for a moment. I think this is the single most important reason why this bike rides so dramatically good. I'm kind of like stuck for words how good really this frame feels. It's so comfortable. Yes, it's not exactly light. I think it weighs about 2,200 grams. I'm not sure whether I even checked, but that's just a guess at this point in time. So I failed to weigh it when I had it completely stripped down. So yeah, that's the frame. It's a cross dash all around the frame that has enough lugs for a rack and mud guards and 2 bottle mounts, and it's superiorly comfortable. So I really love the frame. It also is the perfect size for me for this application. It's 56 centimeters high and 57 centimeters long. Yeah, that is the frame. You can put a price on that frame. I'm guessing that you could probably buy it, if you can find one, for a reasonable amount of money. I don't really want to say a price because it's difficult. To me it's precious, and I wouldn't exactly easily give it away. But anyway, so that's the frame. Okay, I have coupled this frame. It's a brand new, it's a German steel fork that also has rack mounts at the side, and it's made by ABT. That is not to be confused with the Audi tuner of out of the 90s. And also what I can say about this fork, it's perfect shape and it's not very heavy. It's really light for a steel frame. It was around 700 grams and it's deadly comfortable. Also has rack mounts and or mounts for mud guards. You could almost fit a 190 wide tire. I think I'm riding here at 32 today. I have ridden at 35 and that's probably what's going on tonight because that's what my friend wants. So that's the two main ingredients. What sets this apart further is a little spacer that I made here. So this is just a spacer that is custom made. I made various versions of these spacers, so and that's not my latest incarnation, but it's functionally the right height for this. I think we got effectively 17 millimeters of adding length to the fork. So this basically sits on the base where the crown race would sit, and then has its own crown race, and then it does have the crown race in here and the ball bearings then sitting on top. So this just gives an extra amount of space for me when I'm on the pedal and I got my feet sticking out, can jump about on it, and then I will never touch the tire, which in the case where I do not use a spacer, this would be the case. So we're changing the angle, we're slackening the angle of the fork slightly, which again to me it just rides so much better that way, because I just love it when the wheel, as in from my perspective, is a little further forward. I just never get the feeling that I would end up falling forwards over the bar that way. So to me this is just key. It just steers safer. The bike is better going straight forwards. It lifts up the handlebars too a little bit, so it's all around a total fantastic improvement. All you need to do is have enough length for steerer tube, whereas in this case, you know, my steerer tube ends somewhere here anyway, so I've basically used the thinnest setup here for the top race, so that's why it's basically an amalgamation of different races. So that's the original cup. I had to replace that with a more classic steel cup because all of this builds a little bit less high. And then I use an adapter, quill stem adapter, on which I then can bolt on a modern 1 1/8 inch stem, even though the fork is 1 inch and it's threaded. So basically what this does is gives you the opportunity to use a classic 1 inch steel frame, of which there is plenty, and you go back in time, there's 1,000 frames which are brilliant, and you can't really use them with modern geometry and so on. You can't use modern wide bars and so on. So that's basically another thing to use a classic 1 inch steel frame plus fork which is threaded, and that way you get the opportunity to use a modern bar. Okay, so that's the first two main ingredients: frame, fork spacer, quill stem adapter, and a regular modern stem. Okay, the stem, actually, in considering the way I use this, have a look. I'm just riding along here mainly. I love that. And then now we cannot see, but over there is Skinner Butte, my local mountain that I usually go up on. I would actually love a slightly shorter stem, cut it maybe by a centimeters, sorry, use a shorter one by a centimeter or two, actually angle it up a little bit more, and that would be better. I could still adjust the stem upwards, but it kind of looks stupid if you get too many spaces in here. The way this quill stem adapter here is not the best one you can find out there. It's better if it has a return on here, so it pushes down on the stem, and then it's one more thing to secure everything together. It does work fine, but it's not ideal. Also, it's quite long, the wide part for bolting on the stem, and this stem isn't. So that means that I do need these 3 spaces, and you see they're not really tight. So I guess I can push this, open this up, push it down, and then tighten it again. It might make this a little bit safer. Sorry, and make it secure so it doesn't move. It is completely safe as it is. Okay, so stem. This is any stem, any kind of stem. It's by Bontrager, so it's good quality. I fiddled with it, so the original weight of the plate is 20 grams. I drilled it 1, 2, ta-da, and polished it. So I managed to get 1 gram off, so that's 5%, and that's pretty okay. Ridden it for a while, so there's no paint on it. I just polished even the bolts, even though they might rust if they get some water, but hey ho, right now there's no paint. Also the stem itself, I used a paint stripper, got rid of all of the 15 layers of paint that Bontrager used on there, and currently it's just brushed. I'm using a, you know, what any housewife has to scrub the pans, the steel wool with a little bit of detergent in it. That's what I have used finally to give this surface, because as you can see if you look closely, the surface here is bad, and they cover this up with loads of paint, and here I managed to get 10% weight out of it by just stripping the paint and drilling 4 holes like that. Okay, that's the stem. I think it looks kind of cool from that end. Okay, bars. These bars, they're straight from China. I think you can get them shipped to your house for $15. In this case, it's actually quite funny because there is a visual mistake here. This is not structural, totally not. I've ridden this now for 6 months and there's no issue whatsoever, but because of this visual damage, I got the bar for free. What I have tried, and it's actually, yeah, what I have successfully done is I polished the left side. This was way more work than I had imagined, and one of the reasons I did that is because I wanted to look into the manufacturing and the clamping process. And you see that they're clamping here, so there's like, this forms sort of like a change in the highlight, and then again you get that here, and you cannot polish that away unless you really take much more material off than I have. So I guess if I would have to do it again, and I don't think I will, I would dig deeper first, so start with 80 grit sandpaper and then work my way up to a 2500 before I finally polish it with Autosol. Okay, I have also started to drill, but because I got kind of interrupted, this was not finished. Okay, so brake lever, this is totally nothing special, minus that it is adjustable and you can bring in the reach a little bit. Not heavy, simple part. So here I got some fairly used DMR grips. I love that brand, it's my favorite brand. I would never buy another grip from any brand. Don't see the reason why I should. They're not cheap, but they last forever. I think this is like 10 years old and has been ridden most favorably by me. So the bar is 780 wide, and it is ergonomically perfect when it comes to level of angles. Let me put in layman's term, as much as this here angles away from a straight line. So to me it's perfect because I can also adjust it. If you look at it, this would be kind of a horizontal shot. I want it slightly up and I want it slightly backwards. So this bar does it. I can recommend that bar. You can find it on eBay every day of the year, and there's lots of suppliers. You can pay as much as $45 or euros for it, or 15. Just shop around. And it just takes forever to come from China, but it will eventually come, and it's an absolute fantastic piece to the puzzle. So I think defining the three most important parts of this bicycle that really make it: frame, fork spacer, quill stem adapter, stem and bar. Right, that gives you the geometry, and any classic cyclocross or even a classic road bike or a trekking bike frame, if it's not too heavy, can give you this kind of result. Obviously, absolute key is that you can use this kind of brakes. Don't kid yourself. If you are getting into this and you're doing some severe driving and you're working up some decent speed, you want decent brake. And in my opinion, that's the sweet spot. It comes by system, and this is a completely cheap Tektro brake. This even has the plastic housing here for the spring, which I do not recommend, but in this case it hasn't given me any trouble. And I have used way more sophisticated brakes. I tried everything up to hydraulic Magura rim brakes, which are tutored to be the very best on earth, and as in rim brakes. But as in cyclocrossing, as in road cycling, you don't need that. And I just absolutely hate the extra Gefaffe when it comes to setting up the hydraulic lines. And as often as I change a frame or a brake or a bicycle, then getting the hydraulic tubes to length, blah blah, it's a pain in the backside, if you ask me. And okay, the best mechanical rim brake would be a Shimano LX. That's from this group here. I only have the shifter of that group on this bike. That gives a parallel movement for the brake pad in relationship to the rim surface. You know, when this brake arm moves in and out, this obviously is bolted on, so this changes the angle, which is not ideal when it meets the rim surface. Oh, I actually see I need to adjust that a bit. But you know, for this this brake is absolutely adequate, and you see that the whole last 4 months I've been riding with one single brake here. Completely enough. I guess I wouldn't want to descend from Mont Ventoux or Angel Crest Highway without a second brake. That would not work, because it will burn up, and you end up not having a brake at all. So, but for leisurely rides that are like 10-15 kilometers on a quiet day and are mostly flat with little elevation, maybe go up something like 50 height meters and back down, that's fine. Okay, so I would say this kind of brake has the advantage of being super light and being absolutely superior to any kind of central pull brakes or normal rim brakes on road bikes. I would not want that once you go over it. Okay, so that's the brakes. And obviously, feel free, can do second brake in front, no problem. All right, so lastly, let's talk about contact points. Seat. I have used 2 reasonably priced seats recently, and one of them is Charge. I think it's called Charge Spoon. Anywhere from £15, being bought in Britain. I think it's a British product. Brilliant seat for the money, does everything, gives extra cushioning, I much prefer the mountain bike. This would be typically a mountain bike seat by definition, and I absolutely love and need the extra cushioning, because when it comes to comfort, what do I have? I have my gloves, there's a little padding in here. I have grips, and actually most of the time I ride thinner grips, because by that time I have gloves on and decent grips. Even if they're thinner, that tends to be enough. I usually do more tire. Maybe a 38 would be the maximum that I want to ride. This is a 32. Let's talk about tires later. So then for seating, I use obviously my cycling pants, and I use the seat, and I have again the rear tire, and then the steel frame. Oh, hi doggy, for a walk. Okay, let's continue. So that's the comfort points. On this kind of frame, 33mm tire is as much as you can put if it's got any knobbles, or I can also use a 35 road tire, will also fit. I'm recently kind of a convert to use as little tire as possible. I'm coming from the downhill end, and I used to ride up to 2.60, but I realized when I started playing with this bicycle how much rubber you need to propel here, and it just feels like so much easier to ride with much less tire. And obviously once you get used to it and once you get fitter, you can use your body to muffle some of the bumps, and you can look forward and avoid them, so you actually can use the benefit of much less tire. You just get up to speed much quicker, and the grip is phenomenal. Yes, okay, even this is actually a tire I totally love. It's a Panaracer. It's by Panasonic. It's 32 and it's deadly worn. I mean, this is within its last leg, but you know, here even the sidewall threads coming out, but it's not dying yet. It's just shocking how good this tire is. It's shocking how comfortable it is. I can run it as 4.5 bar, and that's absolutely as much as I want to put in a cyclocross usage kind of bicycle. So, and just by sheer softness of the rubber, the grip's still okay. And you know, like this is completely bone stock dry, so in the curves you have to be careful so you're not smearing away by dust actually. So yeah, comfort points we were talking. That means that a little bit of more tire I would prefer. Now mind you, what I'm doing here now, I'm setting this up for my friend as per his preference. I would go with a what I call a rain tire, and that means I would put here a 35 in the back and a 38 in the front, or maybe a 40. I don't want to go fatter because it gets heavier, and then you just pay for it with the speed and the effort that you have to put into cycling. Yes, you gain comfort, and the bigger your tire, the lower you can run the air pressure. So let's say we're using a 35 and we put an illegally low amount of air in there, as in 4 bar, even though the tire manufacturer recommends 4.5. So then that's to me the sweet spot. And at the front I put 40 millimeters at 38 and run it at 3.5. Then you are superiorly comfortable and you're still very fast. And rain tire to me in most conditions, other than you're in the middle of winter and you have a lot of sleet or you have a lot of mud, then it's obviously not sufficient. But you know, like 3/4 of the year in the mild climate zones, I don't need a knobbly tire. But then again, we are talking now tire philosophy. Okay, so my friend wanted knobblies, so there you go. These knobblies here, Schwalbe, I'm German, so I'm allowed to say that Schwalbe to me is the best tire manufacturer, bar none. I love some others as well. You see I have Panasonic in the front, but Schwalbe to me, if I buy something new, that would be the tire I choose, unless it's an Italian bike, then I of course will do nothing but Pirelli. Okay, I'm running dry because I drank all my water and it's hot. So I need to finish up. Okay, gearing. Gearing. This is something that you find on every street corner here. It's a Shimano cassette. Don't go for the cheap stuff here. Don't go for the Chinese stuff. Shimano quality will last 30 years and the Japanese last you half a year. So this is like a super ancient amalgam of different cassettes. Yes, the smallest ones used to wear, they always wear, but let me give you one pointer. You need to adjust your chain length in order to the amount of gearing that you do. So that basically, in this case, this is a 1x8 setup. This is just a regular road cassette, and I deleted the big cog, and I have mounted with a tiny little washer the small cog on the inside with a little bit of spacing, so that gives me a better chain line, so that I am closer with the front cog to the center of the rear cassette. And since I'm riding mostly in this gear, that's where I want a completely parallel chain line to the frame, and that's what I do have here. So this is absolute perfection. Okay, so usually when you get an old cassette, what's worn is the lower, smaller cogs, and then when you do have too long of a chain, your chain will skip. And if your chain is worn, it'll skip even more. Okay, so what I'm doing is here, I'm deleting the two small cogs and put a new one. So this would be a 9-speed cassette, where I have deleted the 12 sorry, I've deleted the two smallest cogs. That was 11 and 13 gears. I have replaced that with a 12-speed gear and a washer from a single speed kit. So now I have 8 gears. This is 9-speed. Of course the chain needs to be at least 9-speed, could be 10-speed, so it doesn't rub against the cogs. The higher the amount of gears that you want to put, the better. So I would say the best chain would be, if you buy a new chain, buy a 10-speed for anything 8, 9 and 10-speed cassettes. So this is a 9-speed cassette, it's a 9-speed chain, it's a 9-speed rear mech. It's not connected yet, but I'm going to do that today, and that's for the shifting. Okay, front, you see that this front tooth wheel has seen better days, but there's absolutely no problem. The key is to get your chain as short as possible, and then it will stay on and will not do any weird sounds. Make sure it's all adjusted, make sure your shifter eye is straight, make sure your frame is straight, make sure the cage at the bottom is straight. You can always bend it back if you had an accident. With a little bit of mechanical sympathy to the steel, you can bend everything always back unless it breaks. Okay, so I want to conclude this video now. If you have any questions, please ask, and then I will try and answer. So let me move this into the sun so you can see it better for a couple of minutes, and then we shall go home.